At first, it looked like just another normal day. People were enjoying their lives without any idea that something was about to go terribly wrong.
Be good. Everybody relax. Relax. It's gonna be hard. Hey! Hey!
Oh my God!
Help!
Oh my God! Somebody help, please!
These ordinary moments suddenly turned into accidents no one was prepared for. And somehow, what you're seeing right now is not even the most disturbing part of this video. Because the final accident is the one that makes this entire list so hard to forget. But before you see that, let's start with the first terrifying accident.
Be good. Everybody relax. It's gonna be hard.
6 people were flying above the mountains of Utah when their pilot suddenly realized that the aircraft was no longer producing enough power to remain in the air. With a lake beneath them and rising terrain surrounding them, he had only seconds to decide where they would come down. On August 7th, 2020, pilot Shadrach Field was flying a Cessna T210M near Moon Lake with his wife Jaslyn, their friends Betsy and Gentry Mikesell, and the Mikesells' teenage twin sons, Brock and Boston. The flight had begun normally, but as the aircraft passed over the lake, Field applied more throttle and received almost no response from the engine. According to Betsy, approximately 12 seconds passed between the moment the problem became clear and the moment the aircraft struck the ground.
Hey, something.
Jack, what is it?
Just, I promise, just relax. Stop. Relax. It's gonna be hard.
Field quickly prepared everyone for a forced landing while searching for the least dangerous area available. One possibility was a beach beside the lake, but people were gathered there, and landing in the sand could have caused the aircraft to overturn. Instead, he steered toward an open area covered in sagebrush. The Cessna hit the ground violently and broke apart, leaving wreckage scattered across the field. Considering the condition of the aircraft, it was difficult to understand how anyone inside had survived. But all 6 occupants were alive. Field and Gentry Mikesell sustained the most serious injuries, including spinal trauma and multiple fractures, while the other 4 occupants suffered less severe injuries. Nearby campers immediately ran toward the wreckage, and people with emergency medical training were reportedly among those who began helping before rescue crews arrived. The recording is disturbing because there was no long mechanical warning and no safe runway within reach. From the moment the engine stopped producing enough power, Field had only a few seconds to choose between several dangerous options, and the lives of 5 other people depended entirely on that decision. And that brings us to the next accident, where the danger did not come from a mechanical failure. It came from an animal its owner believed he knew completely.
Oh my God! Somebody help, please!
He's gonna go!
In late April 2018, tourists at a wildlife sanctuary in South Africa watched a routine interaction between an experienced owner and one of his animals turn into a fight for survival. Mike Hodge, the 72-year-old owner of the Marikele Predator Center, had entered an enclosure containing a lion he knew better than almost anyone.
go! Jump off! Jump off! Jump off!
Oh my god!
Shoot! Ha! 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 Ha!
Get a rifle! Somebody get a rifle, just in case! Somebody get a rifle! Somebody get a rifle!
Oh my god! Please!
Is anybody getting a rifle? Just in case!
Please, somebody help.
That lion was Shamba. A 10-year-old male Hodge had bottle raised from the time he was a cub. Shamba had become the center's main attraction and regularly appeared during an experience known as the Lion Mobile, where tourists watched from inside a specially protected vehicle. On this occasion, staff attempted to distract Shamba while Hodge moved through the enclosure. But the lion suddenly turned his attention toward him. Hodge began running toward the exit, causing Shamba to chase, overpower, and drag him toward a group of bushes, as terrified visitors screamed for someone to find a weapon. A tourist initially fired into the air in an attempt to frighten the lion away. When that failed, Shamba was shot to stop the attack. Hodge was airlifted to a hospital with severe wounds to his neck and a broken jaw, but he survived. Shamba did not. Hodge had spent years caring for him and was reportedly devastated by his death, but the recording became a brutal reminder that raising a wild animal from birth does not remove the instincts that make it dangerous. Mike had only seconds to reach the enclosure's exit. The officer in the following case also had an escape route nearby, but his attention was fixed on something else entirely. The sound of a train horn became increasingly loud behind Officer Andy Anderson, but his attention remained fixed on the burglary suspect moving along the tracks in front of him. On January 7, 2020, the Polk County police officer was pursuing 18-year-old Jaden Moats near a railway line in Georgia. Moats was suspected of committing a burglary and had fled into the wooded area surrounding the tracks. Anderson followed him on foot. As he closed the distance, the officer became so focused on preventing the suspect from escaping that he remained dangerously close to the active railway line.
826-911. Come here. Get Rob or come out towards Piedmont at the railroad tracks.
The train's horn could be heard repeatedly on Anderson's body camera, growing louder as it approached from behind. But before he moved far enough away, the train struck him and launched him into the bushes beside the tracks. Anderson suffered numerous broken bones, but remarkably survived. He remained conscious after the impact and was later hospitalized before being released several days later. Moats initially escaped during the confusion, but police arrested him the following week and charged him with first-degree burglary and criminal trespassing. The recording is especially difficult to watch because the warning is audible long before the collision. You can hear the train approaching and understand the danger, while Anderson remains focused on the person in front of him until the moment it is already too late to react. But while Officer Anderson survived the impact, the woman in the following case would not be as lucky. Gloria Surge was taking her small dog for an ordinary walk behind her Florida home when the water beside her began to move. By the time she noticed what was approaching, she had almost no time left to escape.
Oh my God! The alligator's got him!
On February 20th, 2023, the 85-year-old widow was walking her dog, Trooper, beside a retention pond at Spanish Lakes Fairways, a retirement community in Fort Pierce, Florida. Unknown to Gloria, an alligator that residents had nicknamed Henry was swimming quickly toward the shoreline. The animal, which measured approximately 10 feet long, suddenly lunged from the water and attempted to grab Trooper. The dog escaped, but the alligator caught Gloria by the ankle and began pulling her toward the pond.
Alligator has a woman. How big is it? It's a huge gator. It's huge. I don't have anything to get. Is she alive? Yes, she's alive. Hold her in. It's too late. It's too late. Oh my God. Did you pull her under? Yes. Oh no. I was trying to stick a pole out for her, and I was calling you at the same time, and she's gone. Okay. She's gone.
It's horrible for her family. It's horrible. Just horrible. And her friends. I mean, I talked to a couple of her friends yesterday. They were devastated.
Do you wish you had gotten to her sooner?
There's no way I could have gotten to her sooner.
A nearby resident, Carol Thomas, heard the commotion and saw Gloria struggling in the water. She called emergency services and attempted to reach her with a pole, but Gloria told her that she could not swim away because the alligator still had hold of her. Moments later, she was pulled beneath the surface. Trooper survived, but Gloria drowned. Her body was later recovered, while the alligator was captured and euthanized. Gloria's family later filed a lawsuit against the company that owned the community, alleging that employees knew about the animal, had failed to arrange its removal, and had even fed it. The company denied responsibility. The security footage lasts only a short time, but it captures the entire shift from an ordinary walk to a situation in which an elderly woman was left fighting against an animal powerful enough to pull her beneath the water before anyone could reach her. And that takes us to the next accident, one that happened in another familiar environment, when an ordinary lift suddenly brought an entire crane down. A group of construction workers was standing beneath a crane as it lifted an enormous concrete wall into position. Then, one of the lifting connections failed, leaving everyone nearby only seconds to escape. On January 10, 2018, approximately a dozen workers were gathered at a construction site on East Street Elmo Road in Austin, Texas. The crane was raising a large prefabricated concrete panel when part of the lifting system suddenly broke. The wall dropped, throwing at least one worker who had been standing near it toward the ground. The sudden movement of the load also destabilized the crane. As the workers began running in different directions, the entire machine started tipping toward the construction area around them.
Holy crap.
Both the concrete wall and the crane crashed to the ground, only meters away from several workers. One person was initially believed to be trapped beneath the machinery, but was able to get free. Emergency services evaluated 2 injured men. One was transported to the hospital with injuries that were not considered life-threatening, while the other declined further treatment. The footage lasts only seconds, but it shows why standing anywhere beneath a suspended load is so dangerous. Once the lifting connection failed, the workers had no control over where the concrete panel, or the crane carrying it, would fall. And that brings us to the next disaster, which began when 2 aircraft entered the same space at exactly the wrong moment. Passengers were filming the clear water beneath them when one person noticed another helicopter approaching from the side. He attempted to alert the pilot, but only seconds remained before the 2 aircraft crossed the same path. On January 2nd, 2023, 2 helicopters operated by SeaWorld Helicopters were conducting scenic flights above the Gold Coast Broadwater in Queensland, Australia. One helicopter had just departed from a helipad beside the theme park, while the second was returning from another flight. It was the peak summer holiday period, and both aircraft were carrying tourists. From inside the departing helicopter, everything initially appeared normal. Passengers filmed the coastline, the theme park, and the turquoise water below them. But approximately 20 seconds after takeoff, a passenger appeared to notice the returning helicopter and tried to draw the pilot's attention toward it. The warning came too late. The helicopters collided in midair, damaging the rotor system of the departing aircraft. It immediately began falling toward a sandbar below, where it struck the ground and overturned. The pilot, Ashley Jenkinson, and 3 passengers were killed. 3 other occupants survived with serious injuries. Among them was Winnie De Silva, who was found trapped beneath the wreckage while aviation fuel leaked around her. Her young son, Leon, was also seriously injured. The second helicopter was badly damaged during the collision, but its pilot managed to remain in control and land upright on the same sandbar. Everyone inside that aircraft survived. A later investigation found that the pilots had not established effective separation between the departing and arriving flights. Cockpit visibility limitations made the other aircraft difficult to see, while communication and operating procedures failed to prevent both helicopters from entering the same area at the same time. What makes the passenger footage so difficult to watch is that the danger briefly becomes visible before the impact. Someone inside recognizes that the other helicopter is too close and attempts to warn the pilot. But at that altitude and speed, noticing the danger only seconds earlier was no longer enough to avoid it. The passengers had only seconds to react before the helicopters collided. But in the next recording, the real horror began after the danger had already disappeared from view. A small opening in a frozen river was supposed to be the setting for a brief cold water stunt. Instead, Alexander's wife recorded the moment her husband disappeared beneath the ice and never resurfaced. On February 6, 2022, 38-year-old Alexander visited the frozen Chortomlik River near the Ukrainian village of Kapelivka with his wife and a friend. After using a chainsaw to cut a rectangular opening in the ice, Alexander removed most of his clothing and prepared to jump into the freezing water. Cold water plunges are practiced throughout parts of Eastern Europe, often in connection with Orthodox traditions. But this opening had been cut into a flowing river, where a powerful current continued moving beneath the frozen surface.
Саня, ти не боїшся?
Не боюсь.
Тобі не холодно?
Ні.
Молодець. Боже, тобі не холодно ногам? Ой, Боже, я не можу, бо як це холодно. Господи Боже, хоч би ти не заболів. Молодець. Ой, Господи Боже, як це можна?
Слава Ісусу, навіки слава.
Мама! Боже, де він? О, Боже. О, Господи. Боже, де він? Де він? Де він? Де він?
Сюди!
Ой, Ліша, не впади! Не впади, де він? Боже! Дивись, його не побив!
Alexander's wife asked whether he was frightened or cold, but he repeatedly reassured her before crossing himself and jumping feet first through the opening. He disappeared immediately. At first, those watching appeared to expect him to rise back through the same hole, but when only bubbles appeared, his wife began panicking and calling for help. His friend restarted the chainsaw and attempted to cut through the surrounding ice, but the current had already carried Alexander away from the opening. Rescue divers searched the river but could not reach him in time. His body was recovered the following day at a depth of approximately 13 feet and around 70 feet from the shore. The most frightening part of the footage is not the jump itself, but the seconds afterward, when everyone slowly realizes that Alexander is no longer directly beneath them and that there is no way to know which direction the current has taken him. And that takes us to the next devastating accident. Two men were suspended high above the sea during a parasailing trip off the coast of Greece when the only line connecting them to the boat suddenly began to fail. Before the incident, nothing about the ride appeared unusual. The parachute remained open. The boat continued pulling them across the water, and both men seemed to be enjoying the view. But the footage appeared to show visible wear along part of the tow rope, the single piece of equipment controlling where they traveled and whether they remained connected to the boat. The line suddenly snapped. With no connection left between the parasail and the vessel, the men were carried freely above the open water. They could not control their direction, reduce their speed, or choose where they would come down. Their safety now depended entirely on the parachute remaining stable long enough to lower them toward the sea. For several moments, the boat crew could do little more than watch where the wind carried them. The men eventually descended into the water, away from the vessel, where the operator turned around and traveled back toward them. Both were pulled from the sea safely and escaped without serious injury. The incident ended as a close call, but the footage shows how quickly a recreational activity can become dangerous when everyone involved depends on a single piece of equipment. Once the tow rope failed, the men were no longer passengers being guided behind a boat. They were drifting above open water with almost no control over what happened next. And as we moved to the next accident, another person would suddenly find himself unable to control where he was heading. A student pilot was completing a solo flight at Toronto Buttonville Municipal Airport when an unstable landing sent his Cessna away from the runway and directly toward one of the airport's hangars. On August 24, 2020, the pilot was practicing circuits alone in a Cessna 172M. After touching down on runway 33, the aircraft suddenly veered to the left. The pilot applied full power in an apparent attempt to take off again and perform a go-around. But instead of returning safely to the air, the Cessna changed direction, left the runway, and traveled across the grass between the surrounding taxiways. very little distance remaining, the pilot was unable to regain control before the aircraft struck the side of a hangar. The impact destroyed the Cessna and caused substantial damage to the building, making it difficult to believe that the person inside could have survived. However, the student pilot was removed from the wreckage and taken to the hospital with only minor injuries. What should have been another step toward completing his flight training became a reminder of how quickly a small loss of control during landing can become impossible to correct. And the next recording would involve another group trapped by the environment around them. Only this time, there was no building ahead, just fire on every side.
Go, go, go.
California-Nevada border when the wildfire suddenly changed direction and placed the crew directly in its path. Strong winds pushed flames across the unpaved road surrounding their engine, while thick smoke and burning embers reduced visibility through the windshield. Within moments, the route they had been using to escape appeared to be closing around them. The firefighters could not simply stop or turn around. Their only option was to continue driving through the flames and follow the emergency vehicle ahead of them before the road became completely impassable. Despite being surrounded by fire on both sides, the crew remained calm enough to continue moving until they eventually reached a safer area. None of the firefighters inside the vehicle was injured, but the recording revealed how quickly conditions during a wildfire can change. Only moments earlier, they had been attempting to defend nearby homes. Then, a sudden shift in the wind turned the same road into a narrow escape route through a firestorm. But the next victim would not be surrounded by fire. Instead, the space around him would become smaller with every movement of the train. A routine coupling procedure nearly became fatal when a man remained between two railway carriages as they began moving toward each other.
You okay, mate?
The footage was reportedly recorded in Sydney in April 2007, after a group of railway enthusiasts had returned from visiting the Sydney Tramway Museum in Loftus. During a coupling movement at the terminal, one of the men entered the narrow space separating two carriages. Before he could move clear, the vehicles began closing the gap around him. What initially appeared to be an ordinary railway operation immediately turned into an emergency, as the people nearby realized that the man was about to be pinned between the two sections of the train.
Whoa! You okay, mate?
Should someone call an ambulance?
The operator shouted for the movement to stop, while others rushed toward the trapped man and called for an ambulance. The driver reacted in time and reversed the train, releasing him before the pressure between the carriages became fatal. Those around him then checked his condition while waiting for medical assistance. The man survived, but the recording shows how little room for error exists during a coupling operation. Once someone is standing between two railway vehicles, even a slow movement can produce enough force to crush them before the driver fully understands what has happened. But while the previous victims survived, the passengers in this final recording had no idea their time had already run out. 72 people were only moments away from landing when one passenger began broadcasting the view from his window, completely unaware that his phone was about to record the final seconds of everyone on board. On January 15, 2023, Indian passenger Sonu Jaiswal and 3 of his friends were traveling aboard Yeti Airlines, Flight 691 from Kathmandu to Pokhara, Nepal. As the aircraft descended toward the airport, Sonu opened Facebook Live to share the landing with friends and family. The atmosphere inside the cabin appeared completely normal. Sonu smiled at the camera, His friends laughed around him, and the city could be seen passing peacefully beneath the aircraft.
Okay, stand by, go over.
Fever 150.
Okay, flap 30.
Flaps. Flaps 30. चढ़दै जाऊ है. चढ़दै जाऊ, तल पनि जाऊ. अनि okay, people landing here.
Down 3B.
Flaps
30. Take off.
TLU.
Low speed.
ICU है.
Check.
External lights.
On.
Complete.
Here.
Huh?
Elect for the ride.
5. Check.
Continue to ride.
Continue to. Oh, you नयाँ एयरपोर्ट पछि. अल्तलै.
अल्तलै जानु पर्यो.
हैन हैन. तल हैन, यो त यतिकै ठिक छ. पार हाल है. इधर 691.
पारै आएन.
Wind 1 4 knots, runway 12. अगाडि हाल्नु पर्यो.
आएन सर. ए तर्कै आएन के सर?
ओके, यता जाऊ त.
ओके. यो ल्यान्डिङ है सर.
के भयो?
Without warning, the plane began banking sharply to the left. The relaxed conversation inside the cabin immediately changed as the phone was thrown around. The sound of the aircraft striking the ground was captured, and flames suddenly filled the screen. The ATR-72 crashed into a gorge near Pokhara International Airport and caught fire, killing all 68 passengers and 4 crew members. The final investigation concluded that the condition levers controlling both propellers had most likely been moved into the feathered position by mistake when the pilots intended to adjust the flaps. This caused both propellers to stop producing thrust, leaving the crew unable to prevent an aerodynamic stall so close to the ground. What makes Sonu's recording especially disturbing is how little warning anyone inside appeared to receive. One moment, passengers were smiling during what looked like an ordinary landing. Seconds later, the only image left on the live stream was fire. That's all for today, folks. If you like to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.